what's fascinating about this is that you always hear about African-Americans going to Africa to seek out their relatives. The very first time I've heard it being the other way around, when an African comes here looking for their relatives.
First, I would like to thank you all for coming and allowing me to share with you this amazing experience that I'm living. We will start with my background, so you will know who I am and where I came from. My name is Anthony Zokou Silver, also known as Zadi Zokou. I will tell you why later. Here I am at age 6 or 7 in the early 70s, I think. That's the oldest picture of myself that I have. I was born in Abidjan, that you can see here. Abidjan is the business capital of the Ivory Coast and also its largest city with about 5 million inhabitants. The political capital is Yamoussoukro, a smaller city of about 300,000 people. My parents are Zokou Christophe, a retired nurse born in 1938, and Doudou Lucy, seamstress and a housewife. She was born in 1939, but unfortunately she passed away in 2001. Both are from the tribal group called Bete. I will come back to this later. The Ivory Coast is located in West Africa, between Liberia and Ghana. I know many people here know about Ivory Coast, but usually when I say Ivory Coast to people, they ask me if it's in the islands. So always I tell them, no, it's between Liberia and Ghana, because I know that people are familiar with Liberia and Ghana. So it's right there in the middle, and it's a country of 23 million people, and you have this descriptions. So it's not a very big country. It's not a very big country. And my career, I started as an elementary school teacher. I had a degree as an elementary school teacher in my country, and I taught for 10 years, mainly in small villages. And that should be in early 90s. And here I am, the skinny guy here, with my colleagues. Yeah, it was in a very small village in my country, in the mountains. So I did that for 10 years, and then I turned into filmmaking with what she said. And here I am 2 years ago. It was, you can recognize the place, Cape Coast Castle. I've been there to film for my latest documentary. So, reason for my presence in the US. In 1997, I met a Peace Corps volunteer. Here she is, standing in my country. And so we've been living now together for 21 years, and we've been married for 14 years. And when we met, we decided to stay in my country, to live there, not to come here in the US. But unfortunately, we had some political issues in the country. We have some political issues in the country, and there was some violence. And in 2004, she had to leave. Let's say she's been evacuated by the US embassy. Let's say by France. So she came back here. I waited for her for 9 months. She couldn't come back. That's why I came to the US. I came in 2005. So now life in the United States. We settled in Natick, that's how she said. That's a very white town back then. Now there's more diversity in Natick, but when we went there 13 years ago, I was one of the few. But today you have a lot of Chinese, a lot of Indians, a few more black people. So how I became Zadi. Zadi, in fact, is my African first name, but it's not on my papers. And every people call me Anthony. So call me Anthony, or some call me Sylvain. And in my country, we like to call people with the last name. So many people in my country call me Zokou. And when I came here, the first people I met asked me, you say your name is Anthony and you are from Africa. You may have an African name, right? I said, yes, why don't you use your African name? First, what's your African name? I said, Zadi. They said, okay, we feel like it reflects more of you, Zadi, instead of Anthony. That doesn't mean anything to you. So from now on, we're going to start calling you Zadi. And now for more than 10 years, everybody calls me Zadi. The beginning, I was kind of, I didn't know that they were talking to me because I was not used to be called Zadi. But now, when people call me Anthony, I respond, but more people call me Zadi now. So that's how I became Zadi, thanks to American people. And let's say it was at the time where Obama was rising, so it looks like people were interested in African names back then. So, my connection with African Americans. We acquired some African American history in school, in primary school, and what you call here middle school, we call the college, and high school that we call lycée in French. But it's something like that. We learn about African American history, but it's very superficial. The main thing we learn in primary school and middle school, if you want, is that there was this triangular trade. The Europeans came to Africa, they took the slaves, went to America, traded the slaves with spices, and they brought the spices to Europe, they sold the spices and came back to the cycle. That's mainly what we learned. We didn't really learn about what was going on here, about slavery and everything. And then when I was in high school, we had roots. In French, they call it racine. Roots. And this is something that changed our mind about slavery. There. So now we could put a history on the life of the black Africans we came here as slaves. But it was not enough. It was just a movie. And I remember some friends who were making fun of other people. For instance, a friend of mine used to call one of our classmates Toby because he was very strong. And it was a kind of bad joke. But that was high school where still kids were, and we didn't understand things very well. And the other influence that I had was my English teacher. I think this guy was amazing. He was, his name was Mr. Fofana. I still call him Mr. I can't call my teachers by just their name. It's always Mr. or Mrs. or Miss. And Mr. Fofana. And this guy, I think, when I think about it now, he was a big fan of Malcolm X. Because he made us study a lot of writings and speeches from Malcolm X. I remember a few of them, The Story of Mankind is War, and the original one was Black. But we studied them. But he didn't stop there. He taught us about the civil rights movements. We even had a study, a comparison between the civil rights movement and the fight against apartheid. He did that, and he did something like a comparison also between Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois. So we're just, this guy, let's say he shaped me back then. And now the other influence for our connections with African Americans was reggae music. Reggae music. I'm sure, I don't know if many of you listen to reggae music, but I do. I started listening to reggae music when I was 13. And ever since, that's the main music that I listen even today. I'm going to give you a few examples of how it influenced me. I didn't know about the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, until I listened to Ku Klux Klan sung by Steel Pulse. It's a Jamaican English reggae band. They sing Ku Klux Klan. And I listened to it, what they said, and that's how I got interested in what the Ku Klux Klan would be. Or another example, when we study the slave trade there, or let's say the history of the United States, what people tell us is that Columbus discovered America. And then in high school, I came across a song where the singer, Burning Spear, he said, Christopher Columbus is a damn blasted liar. Yeah, he's a damn blasted liar. So it made me question this assertion that Columbus discovered America in high school. So this is a few examples of how reggae, so reggae is a music that sings Pan-Africanism. When you listen, for example, when you listen African by Peter Tosh, where he said, don't care where you come from, as long as you're a black man, well, an African, like a black woman. So. But as long as, you see, it's this kind of music that I listen to most of my life. And it triggered my interest for the black diaspora in general and the African American story particularly. But having said that, I had a very limited interaction with people of color in Natick because of how Natick was, but also because when I first came, I used to work in retail. And you know, with the crazy hours in retail, it's hard to have a social life. So I could not really connect with African Americans. But everything changed when I started to do documentary movies. One of the first one was Praying Town. Yeah, it's an early history of Native Americans and African Americans here in Natick and Massachusetts. Briefly, the first part is the history of John Eliot and the Praying Indians, the first Indian that he converted to Christianity. And the first town where he put them was Natick, because he created about 14 towns throughout Massachusetts. And the first was Natick. So it's the history of those people that I told in the documentary. But while doing that, something happened. I said, okay, I come from Africa. I have the ability to make movies. I'm making a movie about Native Americans. But what about African Americans in Natick? I think I should also. It's a kind of duty. I should do it too, because. So I added 30 minutes of on the documentary, yeah, to make something about the early history of African Americans in Natick and here southern New England. And that's how I met Beverly Smith. She's a member of the ADHS, and she's a big part of the movie. And then I started to do Black and Black, to explore the relationship between native-born African Americans and African immigrants to the US. And when I was doing that, my wife told me, if you are so interested in your relationship with African Americans, why don't you do your DNA testing? she did hers. She's Irish-American, so it was easy for her to find a lot of people. But she was very excited all the time when she was one. And she would spend a long time searching and finding people. But me, I was not sure that I could find somebody because we were raised thinking that our relatives there, we came here before us, came so long ago that it's practically impossible to find them. And about DNA, I thought that it was that it had diluted over generations because there are a lot of mixing and things like that. And 400 years, it's a long time. So maybe there's nothing left. But anyway, I did the DNA testing. I don't know why. Maybe it was my curiosity as a filmmaker or just the hope for a miracle. So I did it. So I did it on Ancestry.com. So the results came. Here is my results. And this changed a little bit recently because they updated everything. The first result was that I was 96% Ivory Coast, Ghana, minus 1% Mali, and I think about 2 or 3% hunter-gatherer, East Africa, something. But they said that that was done with a sample of 3,000 people. But the new one was done with a sample of 16,000 people. And that's how they found that 65 Ivory Coast, 25% Mali. But anyway, it doesn't change anything because I'm 100% from the West Africa region. Now, my results about African Americans. It was a big surprise to me. I don't want to show it to you here because of privacy things. But I found about 300 distant African American relatives and about 12 fourth cousins were African Americans. And I couldn't believe that. At first, I thought that Ancestry.com made a mistake. I thought they made a mistake and that they gave me somebody else's results, an African American. It's not until we did our daughter's test that I knew that was my results, and but those African Americans were related to me through DNA. Yeah, it was. So I started to have some theories about how this would have happened. And so this is debatable. It's just what I think would have happened, how I ended up having some African American relatives here in the US. So the first thing is related to the Bete people, the tribal group I'm from, the Bete people. The second theory is about the Kru people. The Bete are a subgroup of the Kru people. And the Kru, we're going to see it expand to Liberia. And they used to work on European ships, at least those who were on the coast. And of course the transatlantic slave trade and the Ivory Coast. So we're going to see that in detail. All right, this is, I don't see if you can see it very well, but this is here the Kru people until Liberia. And this is where the Betes are located in the Ivory Coast. Right. So we are a subset of the crew group that spans to Liberia, and according to research and oral tradition, in fact, the Betes are anthropologists told us that there are about 93 subgroups into the Bete group. And some people think that some of those groups migrated from Liberia to where they are located right now. So if they did that, maybe they met some African Americans who went back to Liberia and formed Liberia. This is one of the theory. And in the Ivory Coast, people used to tell us, oh, you Bete, you come from Liberia. I didn't believe that, but now I'm tending to think about it. So this is the first theory. The second theory is about the crew people in general, because the Bete are including the crew people. So the crew people living along the Atlantic coastline, they were known for their skill in navigating the ocean, because there were fishermen. Why always put men at the end? Fishermen and women. So there were fishermen, and they used to work with European traders who came there. Because there were many European traders who came to the Ivory Coast before the slave trade. You had the Portuguese, you had the French, you had the English, and they used to work with them. And even during the slave trade, they used to work on the slave ships also. So my take is some of those crew people may have settled here later, because the Cape Verdean did that. They came here in mass because they were working on the whaling ships, and later they decided to settle here. Maybe some crew did it, and maybe my ancestors were among them. But this is just a theory. We can discuss that. Now, the last one is about the transatlantic slave trade. For a long time in my country, we thought that we were not affected by the transatlantic slave trade. But just what we thought. Even in school, when we speak about the transatlantic slave trade, we don't say that it happened in Cote d'Ivoire. It's always Ghana, Nigeria, Liberia, but never Cote d'Ivoire. Yeah. And the reason for that is they used to tell us people were not interested in human beings. They were interested in ivory, elephants and ivory. But now that I think about it, in Ghana next door they had a lot of gold. But despite the gold, they took human beings. We just have ivory and elephants. Why do you think that? So, but I think it was a hidden story. I don't know why, but it was hidden to us for a long time. And recently, I think it was in 1994 they started some research through UNESCO. They call it slave routes. And it's in many countries in Africa, including Ivory Coast. And they found some slave routes in Cote d'Ivoire. And recently, there was a big ceremony that I put in my movie. Yeah, there was a big ceremony there, a ceremony of forgiveness, where African officials in a village called Kanganyanze, that means river for slaves, Kanganyanze, where the slaves, where the captives were cleaned before being sent to the coast and sent to the Americas. Yeah, there was this ceremony there, and Ivory Coast officials apologized publicly to African Americans for the role we played in the slave trade. Yeah, that was last year, just last year. And now everything is coming out. And there's an estimated 250,000 captive slaves that were sent from present-day Ivory Coast to the Americas. And during this ceremony, there were a lot of people from the Caribbean, especially Guadeloupe and Martinique, who found their roots in Côte d'Ivoire, and a few African Americans. So maybe my ancestors were among those who were shipped here, but at least I know that I had somebody here long before me. So these are the theories. Now, what do I do with these results? What do I do with these results? It's some African American friends of mine, they told me that I am somebody that the ancestors sent for a mission. I said, okay, I don't know if I'm a chosen one, but I know that I have to do something with those results. I have to do something. Because I'm lucky enough to have found some relatives here, and I would like other Africans to do the same, to at least seek out to their relatives here. Because over there, we tend to, as I said, we tend to think, okay, they're gone, yeah, they're lost forever. But if there's one way to find them, we should try. And this is what I gave myself as a mission, and I'm starting today. So, DNA testing helps a lot of African Americans find the area and sometimes the tribe, the ancestors originated from. But with Africans, we can do more. We can give them a name or a biological family. One of the ways of doing it is have more Africans do the DNA testing. Yeah, because if we have more Africans in the pool, I don't think my case is very special. I don't think I'm special. I just think that I did the DNA testing. That's how I found some relatives here. And I'm sure other people would find the same thing. Recently, we were screening my latest documentary at Boston University, and I spoke with one of the professors there, and he told me that his wife found some relatives in Ghana through DNA testing, because those people had done the DNA testing also, and she found them, their relative, and she met them. So I think if more Africans are interested in doing those testings, there will be more connections with African Americans. And so I'm willing to use my experience to sensitize my fellow Africans, not only in the US, but also in Africa, and DNA testing, and for them to seek out to the African American relatives. So that's what I'm starting today, and what I want to do, the methodology is articles. My wife and I, we wrote an article, but I didn't submit it to any newspaper yet. And by videos, of course, I'm a filmmaker, and right now I'm filming this, and it's going to be part of a video that I'm going to create and maybe put on YouTube or show in conferences and things like that. Yeah, to sensitize people. And presentations like this, and meeting with communities, everything. And if you have other ideas, you can tell me and can explore that. So, now the African American cousins that I have met. So far, I met 3 of them. You know how it is. Okay, I have hundreds of them. I can't write to everybody. But I decided to focus on the 4th cousins and the distant cousins that were very close to 4th cousins. So I sent several messages. I got 3 reactions. And that's the people that I'm going to show you. The first one is Tonya. Last year, I flew to Vegas to meet her. But I tell you, you know Vegas, the lights and the fun, but I was not interested in that. I mean, it didn't mean anything to me. My main thing was to at last see this relative. She was the first one. So we met, we hugged for about a minute, but I still have chills when I think about that. It was like surreal to me that I could meet somebody from my family after all these years of separation. So, but the fun thing is, after a few hours together, we're talking as if we knew each other forever. Yeah, it was just, yeah. So we're still in touch. She wants to come to Massachusetts to see Fiona, my daughter, and my family. But so far we didn't find the time. But she will come over. So that was the first one last year in August. And this year, yeah, it's kind of, but here I am. This year I went to Florida to meet the other one, Shirley. She invited me to her birthday. So she introduced me to everybody there. And when they were taking the family picture at the end of the thing, she called me over. She said, no, come over and join us in the family picture. So this is the second one. And for the last one, I didn't have to travel a lot. It was right here in Massachusetts. Right here in Massachusetts. So here she is, and with her there was less emotion because I was getting used to meeting. And to me, it was not just now an African-American cousin. It was just true family now. I was getting used to the idea that they were my family. And then 2 days ago, she invited me for Thanksgiving. They have a small family gathering on Thanksgiving, and she wants me to be part of it. And it's going to be at her son's, and her son is my fourth cousin. So, to conclude, I'm going to do some reading. My finding African-American relatives have been a life-changing moment for me. Yeah, it's been very important for several reasons. First, when I see African-Americans now, I don't see them as distant or lost cousins. I see them as parents' relatives because I could find among them those who are related to me. And I'm sure that each of you here can find the African-American relatives. But for that, we Africans have to make the effort to seek out to you and to do our DNA testing. As simple as that. But the other reason is that how is the life-changing thing? I used to be a kind of reserved guy. Okay, I do documentaries, but I think I could have done more as actor. I had the opportunity. But I'm not the kind of guy to be in front of people speaking. And I'm not the kind of guy who's a big family guy. When I say big family guy, I mean the extended family. I really didn't care about extended family. I was just focused on my family. But this experience and this mission I give myself make me now go out, meet people, and try to know more about my own family in the Ivory Coast and my own travel. So it's life-changing, and I hope to identify this common ancestor or ancestors and learn more about my family story and more broadly the history of my travel group. And I think this journey is going to be the subject of my next documentary. I'm going to start trying to raise funds for this movement. And I hope that someday I bring my newly found cousins back home to their family. Yeah, at least for them to see where some of their ancestors, because I don't think that my ancestor was the only African on their lineage. Maybe they had, because they have other relatives who came here, but at least the Ivorian parts for them to see. So, we're almost there. This is in 1985. No, I'm laughing because I've been helped by Charlie, and I think he's the one who added that. Yeah, it's in 1985, the name of the country was officially changed from Ivory Coast to Côte d'Ivoire. But in fact, nobody cares about that. Because when I meet Spanish people, they call the country Costa de Marfil. We meet in Portuguese, Costa do Marfil. Some English people, Ivory Coast. So everybody translate the name. So I think until we find an original name like Ghana did, it was Gold Coast, it's Ghana now. Burkina Faso was Haute-Volta, it was French. They changed it to Burkina Faso. Everybody calls it Burkina Faso. So until we do the same, people will not care about translating now. All right, thank you. That was my presentation. So if you have any questions?
Hi, my name is Tonya, and what is fascinating about this is that you always hear about African-Americans going to Africa to seek out their relatives. The very first time I've heard it being the other way around, when an African comes here looking for their relatives. I also want to let you know that I'll keep an eye out for you in Native, because that's where I live too. I'll look for you in the Roach Brothers. And also we'll let you know, in the Native post office, there's a great mural of John Eliot and the Praying Indians. I don't know if you've ever been to the Native post office, but it was put there back in the early 1900s.
Yeah, I put that history on in my movie Breakdown. Yeah, this mural about John Eliot.
Yes.
Yeah, that was when the Praying Indians of Nedic were being sent to Deer Island.
Deer Island, yes.
Yeah, were being sent to Deer Island during King Philip's War.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think at least half of them died there.
That's true.
Yeah. And I've been to Deer Island when the Nipmucs, in 2010, when the Nipmucs had the ceremony. They had this ceremony.
Yes, a few of those people were members of our church, the Nipmucs.
What's the name of the church?
It was St. Paul's.
Aha.
St. Paul's, it was the Haskell family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul Haskell is in the movie.
Yes, Paul Haskell, he passed away last month.
Wow, I didn't know.
Paul was 102, going on 103.
The last time I saw him, he was 100.
Yeah.
And he was at the parade,
Yeah.
4th of July parade.
Yes. Yes.
That's the last time I even took a picture. But I didn't. Wow.
But he lived a great life. He was alert to the end, physically and mentally. Yeah, Paul, he lived 102. He would have made 103 this year.
I'm glad I filmed it.
Yeah.
He's in the movie. He's part of the movie. So you are part a Native American?
Just a little bit. From Maine. From Maine. Yeah.
Vous êtes ici dans les États-Unis depuis combien de temps?
Je vis ici depuis. You need to speak French. Je vis ici depuis.
Tu peux parler en anglais.
Je vis ici depuis 13 ans.
13 ans, seulement 13 ans.
Yeah, I've been living here
No,
for
that's-
13 years. Yeah, only 13 years.
Oh, I was.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the Mende. Have you done research on the Mende people and their relationship with John Quincy Adams? And, no?
The relations with
John Quincy Adams?
No,
The
no,
Monday?
no,
Oh,
no, I didn't do any research.
We can talk about that.
But we have many Mondays in my country. In fact, the Ivory Coast, yeah, just a little stretch. There are 4 big groups in the Ivory Coast. You have the Kru, who I'm a member of. You have the Monday. Monday, do you know Monday? North Monday and South Monday. You have the Go, more east, and you have the Akans, the largest group there, Akans. And many African Americans here, I think, are related to the Akan people. Yeah. And among the Akan people, there's a group called the Baule. I think it's the largest tribal group in the Ivory Coast, the Baule. And many people here are related to the Baule. Yes?
You know, Vivian and I have lived for a while in Abidjan, but we also lived in Yaoundé, Cameroon. And the people just north of Yaoundé are Bete. And the president, you know, comes from that group, the Bete. Abia, yeah. So I wondered if there was historically some connection of migration.
Yeah, I did some research. In fact, in Liberia, you have an ethnic group called the Bassa. And you have also Bassa in Cameroon.
In Cameroon, yeah.
And Bassa are Kru. So it might be a relationship between both.
But I was intrigued in that in your DNA map, it didn't connect with Cameroon. But do you think that's because they haven't tested enough in Cameroon?
Oh, I think it connects a little bit. Because when we see, no, not this one. Yeah. You see this year, Mali, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, even though it's not mentioned there, but the span is Nigeria and a little bit of early Cameroon. So I don't know, it's them. But maybe, and I need to do some research. Sorry?
Just call.
Just a bit.
Take her first.
When you met your cousins, have any of them been working on family genealogy as well?
Yes. Okay.
I don't want to dominate this. You mentioned the Akan people.
Yeah.
That's a tribal group in Cote d'Ivoire.
Yeah.
Is it the same group that's in Ghana, right? Because they're the Akan people of Ghana as well?
Yeah.
Same group?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, it's
okay.
the same group. And
Same group.
the Baule I was talking about,
Yeah.
the Baule group, they used to be in Ghana. They used to be in Ghana. There's a legend about that, but there's a true story and a legend. The true story is that they were living there, and the Ashanti became very powerful, and the Ashanti wanted to dominate them. So they said no, and they fled. And they fled to Ivory Coast. They fled westward, and they settled in the Ivory Coast. Now, the legend that we teach in schools also, and that I taught my students, is that at the head there was a queen, and she lived. There was a queen back then, Queen Poku, Abla Poku. So they fled with this queen, and on their way, they met a river. I think it was a river Komwe that was raging. So they couldn't cross the river, and the Ashanti were coming to them. So the spirit of the river told them if they want to cross the river, they need to give away a baby. So who's going to give up his or her baby? Nobody wants us to do that. But the Queen Abacos, she just had a baby. And she was the queen, she had to lead by example. So she gave her baby, she threw her baby in the river. And then I think what the legend says is that there was a bridge that was formed by hippopotamus. And the tribe was able to cross the Gombe River to get to where they are now. So when they cross the river, the husband asked Queen Abacos where the baby is. And she said, Bauli. In the language, Bauli means the baby is dead. And that's how they became Bauli.
Folklore and African proverbs are very much a part of our tradition. And there is an Akan proverb that says, until the lion tells his own story, the story of the lion will always glorify the hunter. So thank you for helping to tell us.
Okay. Oh, thank you for having me here. I mean, this is a story that I tell many African Americans, and I think it's a story that will make a good movie here, like Black Panther or something like that. But Queen Abacos, there were a lot of books written about her, and the comics and things like that. Yeah, and it's a story we teach in schools in my country. Yeah.
Perhaps you can add to your mission, finding the last African. That means the last of your relatives born in Africa that came to the United States, and the first American. That's one of your relatives, the first of your relatives born.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That may help. I mean, it's because
The burden will be on your fourth cousins to do paper research. Archives here can generally take you back at least to the third great grandparent. In Massachusetts, they can't generally do that. Maybe in other parts of the country, perhaps not. Because the archives and records, town records, go back to the early 1800s of births, deaths, and marriages. So
yeah,
put the burden on your Northampton fourth cousin to get into the archives.
yes. And that's true because when I see fourth cousins, means 5 generations. So it means that one of my grandparents may have known this ancestor. One of my grandparents may have known and met this ancestor. So it's not that far back. So yeah, I think we're going to have a very fun Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank you
I
for
think
having
that,
me here.
I just pulled up my ancestry, and I thought, I wonder if he's going to show up as one of my cousins. He mentioned earlier that how Ancestry had updated its results, and originally mine was showing about 38% Ivory Coast gone. But in the most recent update, it's dropped down to about 20%, with 32% Cameroon, Congo, Southern Bantu peoples, and about 21% Benin, Togo. So I think Irving is correct in that we should keep peeling the onion and going back further and further, because and I think if we look at the transatlantic slave trade and try to figure out, okay, which of those ships were coming into these ports where some of us who are still here, have researched and found that our relatives were, perhaps we can mesh it together
Yeah.
and come up with an answer and find that, who knows, we might find that we have a common ancestor. But it's.
I'm
it's
sure we
best-
do.
Yes. But it's just all fascinating, and DNA has, it's very complex, but I think we're getting there. We're getting there, and I certainly agree with you when you said that to encourage more Africans to take DNA tests, because we need to have more people in the pool, and I think that will help Ancestry, it will help 23andMe, all the testing companies have a larger pool, and we could have much more accurate results. So let's give them another round of applause.